Welcome to Ecologic for the month of June. We've just, we're fortunate to have with us Dave Dixon and Chris Tauzin, who's going to be talking about the flood of 2026 that missed Lafayette, and so sure hit St. Martin and St. Landry and the Voiles and that whole area. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us, Mr. Sam.
Thank you for having us so we can, relay to the public like what went down during this episode here.
Well, the headlines on this morning papers was that 1,500 homes went under
1,500, I didn't know the number was that
1,500.
much. Yeah,
in Avoyelles, St. Landry, Point Coupé. I guess you'll have any in St. Martin Parish?
No, we didn't get any flooding directly from that. We had a little bit of flooding from the rains we caught last Sunday. We had a few homes that had some issues, but we didn't get. We pretty much got all the backwater flooding coming in, the water that's coming down from into the Borpey Canal. That's pretty much the water we're dealing with right now. But we've been fortunate. The water's high, but we've been able to pass the waters without any problems. A lot of that, I think, we did a dredging project on the lake in Catahoula, and we're +2, +3 in some parts, and the deepest part was about 4 to 5 foot in some areas, and we brought everything down to 8-foot depth. We did it with local. We kind of proud to say that we were able to do that with local bond money that we had passed on the millage that the taxpayers had approved, and I really believe that was a very important thing that we've done over the last few years in St. Martin Parish, because we were able to get those waters to flow through there. We didn't get much backwater flooding, so we were very fortunate. But my heart goes out to those people because, I can tell you the most helpless I've ever felt in my life was in 2016 when we caught that 30 inches of rain and we had to watch people's homes flood. And one thing I learned with flood waters, it doesn't matter if it's 6 inches or 6 foot. When it gets in the house, it's done.
it's a mess.
It's a mess.
Right.
So
So with that, we want to go ahead and give them the overview. Want to start with that?
Yeah.
You want to pull up that first power slide there? You want to turn off the Ecologic, the call-in number for the time being?
Yes.
That's what we're going to talk about here. This major flood that happened north of us here, very, very close to us. There's been some projects that's been done, some successes. We're going to talk about some of them, okay? And there's also some projects that have not been done since the major flood of 2016. And talk a little bit about why we're still at risk of another major devastating flood event. And a classic tale is a young lady standing in the middle of the Vermilion River at Rotary Point in July of 2020. And we'll talk about that in a little while and later on in the presentation. Let's go on to next slide, please. Okay, one of our guiding principles at Dredge is to do no harm, to maximize the potential for the overflow swamps to act as a natural floodplain, okay? And we have many natural floodplains in our watershed. We have, for example, starting up around Alexandria, you got the Lake Coquetry area. To the east of that, you got the Spring Bayou area. South of that, you get into the Western Chapel floodway, and further south, you got the Cypress Island swamp. So you got a lot of different natural flood plains, okay? Remove obstructions to flood flows, we got to do that. We're gonna talk about that a little bit too. Divert the flood waters where possible into these natural overflow places rather than send them down to us where it gets in people's houses. And anything we do should strive to improve water quality and wildlife habitat. And we really need a plan, a formal plan, and a team that addresses these storm threats and prepares the watershed as much as we can to lower the water that's already in the watershed as much as we possibly can to establish retention prior to a storm. And we're going to talk about what happened here with this particular storm. Next slide, please. Okay, just a reminder, this kind of put people to sleep about the flooding problem because about 4 years prior to 2026, we were in a pretty severe drought. You can see the color coding for Louisiana there. We were really shy of rainfall for about 4 years there. And you know, you just don't, I guess you don't worry about it till they open up the sandbag facility. And then when you open up the sandbag facility, you say, oh boy, you know, are we gonna be okay? But anyway, we need to worry about it. We need to worry about it. We need to fix the problems. Next slide, please. All right, just a little history of unintended consequences. You know, they had a great flood, just maybe replowing some ground. Some people have probably seen this already. In 27, we had a great Mississippi River flood. That was one of the biggest natural disaster in the history of the country. Affected 6 states and I forget how many millions of people. Okay, in 35, they federalized all the levee systems and floodways. And the key thing for our watershed here is they blocked by Catawba and its drain path to the Atchafalaya River. In 1940, they had a flood that was 7 feet higher on the Surrey gauge on the Vermilion River than 2016, okay? And then they had another major flood in 43 and a third major flood in 47. And people at the Corps of Engineers said, oops, we must have made a mistake. So they did 2 things. They dredged the Vermilion River. That was the first project in the early 50s. And Harold actually witnessed that.
Yeah.
He talked about it sometimes, watching them dig that out, dig the river out. And then they added floodgates for Catawba on the West Guide levee up there, right south of 190. That's the people know it around here as the Henderson levee, okay? So they opened up some floodgates to let the water, the Catawba water into the West Atchafalaya floodway. And then again in 2016, we had the first major flood in 69 years since they did those 2 projects. Even with all the development, all the lack of maintenance on everything, everything worked pretty good, but we just couldn't take it no more because we had too many issues, too much development, and finally it caught up with us in 2016. And this year, we had a major flood 56 miles north of Lafayette. I actually measured that on Google Earth. 56 miles north of Lafayette, of the airport in Lafayette, was ground zero for this flood, where they had the 30-something inches. So we're going to get into like what happened. Well, obviously the 30-something inches is what happened. And why was this so bad? So we want to go to the next slide. Okay. Well, what happened? By Catawba up there, did we jump a slide by any chance?
It's possible, let me go back.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, this one's a little busy here. So Catawba basically receives all the water from central Louisiana, okay? Back before they built the levee system, there were no gates there. That's the gates they built I talked about as that project number 2. And Catawba used to go straight out to the river, okay? Well, what happened when they put that gate, they dug a canal, which is the furthest one closest to the levee. You can see kind of like where the levee's at there. And it says down to I can't read it. There's a Grimmett Canal, and it goes to Henderson Lake, okay? So the idea was to put these gates there. We're not gonna try to send the water to the Atchafalaya River. We're gonna send it south to Henderson Lake. And actually on the other end of the old Atchafalaya, on the inside, the part that they abandoned, they didn't even put a gate at the levee there. So it just blocked it at the levee on the riverside too. So anyway, we have a project right now to clear and snag that canal, that Grimmett Canal, that takes the water from those gates, okay? And that project is going to open up some gaps in the spall banks that are plugged up, as well as open up the end of that canal where it goes into Little Bayou Photos, okay? And we're gonna show you again, like what that means about opening up these gaps. This project is still in the design stage. It's being worked with CPRA. Let's go on to the next slide. All right, so what happened during that gate right there? Sad to say, but the Corps of Engineers didn't start opening the gate till the water was rising. As you can see, if you look at the end of the red arrow there, the water was already starting to rise above their target. They opened it, it went down 4 inches, and 7 hours later, it caught that 4 inches back, and it kept on rising till it peaked above 20 feet, right there, okay? So that is that much water backed up all the way into Aval's Parish because they couldn't get out into the basin, okay? Let's talk about those gates a little bit we just showed you a picture of. In 2007, the the Corps of Engineers issued a report to the Mississippi River Commission that said, hey, these gates are undersized and they need to be addressed, okay? Well, they haven't been addressed, okay, and they're still undersized. Not only are they undersized, but the outfall of that gate, that Grimmett Canal, is still compromised really bad. So what it does, it won't take as much water as it should take. Okay, so they dropped the ball, they didn't open the gate ahead of time. The whole idea, we had a plan, we can't get everybody to sign on to the plan, is to open that gate 3 days ahead of time and start letting water out of the system. By opening that gate 3 days ahead of time, we actually drain all the bayous that are connected to Bayou Catawba all the way back to Alexandria on the Rapides Parish side and all the way back to Mooresville on the Aval's Parish side, Marksville area there, okay? So all that's connected to this Bayou Catawba. So everything from central Louisiana is coming to see us over here. Next slide, please. Okay, and why does that happen? There's a big bayou up in Aval's Parish called Bayou de Glaze, okay? And that bayou used to drain to the Atchafalaya River near Simmsport. Well, there was a flood in 73, 73, I'm sorry, that damaged that gate in that picture right there. And as you can see, that gate's been plugged and abandoned. So guess where that water comes? It comes all the way down to us down here. Next slide, please.
Bayou de Glaze is 274 square miles of
Yeah.
watershed.
A huge watershed north of us, okay?
Lafayette Parish is 255 square miles.
Okay, in the 50s, Bayou de Glaze was hooked to, because even when that gate was operational, they couldn't handle all the water. So they dug a diversion canal from Bayou de Glaze in Mooresville, and they connected to the bar pit levee, what they call the Bayou de Glaze, they call it the Bayou de Glaze diversion also, and send that water down to Bayou Catawba. So basically, all of Aval's Parish water outside of the floodway is coming down to Bayou Catawba also. And of course, the water on the inside is coming down inside to Lake Henderson also, okay? So there was a project proposed by Aval's Parish for LWI to connect. I know it's hard to see on that. I don't know how big it is on your TV, but on the upper right-hand side, there was a project proposed to connect the bar pit back to Bayou de Glaze there and send it to the Atchafalaya River. So let me give you a little information about how high the water was right there around Poshaville, which is on that map there, okay? And the water over in Simmsport in the river, there was a 20-foot difference. It was the 20-foot head between the water level and the Bayou de Glaze diversion channel right there and the Atchafalaya River. If they'd have put that project in and they'd opened that gate and let that water go down there, it was 8 miles to the river from where they'd put that gate, it wouldn't have been nearly as bad. Well, now I got a call from one of the officials in St. Landry Parish today about the Aval's Parish officials, the state delegation wants to meet, talking about solutions. Well, we need to add some solutions for them and for us, because if they can't handle it, it's coming to see us, okay? Next slide, please. Okay, well, a success here in cooperation with St. Landry and St. Martin Parish and CPRA. In the basin, we removed some spall banks in the on the Dixie pipeline. We got a picture of what that looks like a little further in. Next slide, please. That was completed in summer of '23. So some good news here about, we do have a little bit of good news here, a lot of good news, actually. So we are working on it, but we're just not there yet. Next slide, please. Whoops, I think we might have jumped one there. Okay, we have proposed a gate to go between Bayou Amy and Bayou Catawba, right there at those same gates that I talked about that are undersized. And what that allows us to do, if we can put that gate there, it'll accomplish a couple goals. Number one, if we can't flow the water to the floodway because the floodway is too high, and that happened during Hurricane Barry, we could open that gate 3 or 4 days ahead of time, or 5 days ahead of time, and start lowering Bayou Catawba and get the water out of the system before we get the rains. Also, it'll benefit by providing more fresh water to south of there. You want to talk about that, Chris? You want to tell everybody, brief them on that?
So basically with the Dredge Vermilion project, what we have, when we have low water conditions and stuff, before our water gets stagnant or we have fish kills or just, our water gets bad, we have a pumping system at Dredge Vermilion where they have 5 pumps and they'll pump fresh water into the Bayou Teche, they're diverted through the root bridge, the root structure, and they can pass water through the Vermilion, and it keeps our water quality better. Well, on the Bayou Amy part, it was never really involved with it. We'll take the flood waters, but we don't get the fresh water. And at certain times of the year, we get poor water quality, and I mean poor water quality, like when there's grindings going on during sugarcane season and stuff, the runoff from the fields and the pits when they drain the pits out and they stuff. Our water gets stagnant, we have bad water and all. So, and we did a dredging project we spoke about a while ago on the Catahoula Lake. And when the engineers were doing this, he said, this project is gonna be successful, we know it'll work, it'll let the water through. But he said it's gonna be the future of the project, and meaning that 10 years down the road. He said, we need to have a plan. He said, but the problem is, he said, we gotta get fresh water moving in this canal constantly. Because if you don't have fresh water moving, what happens, that water will travel and it's carrying all this siltation, and when it gets to where Bayou Bayrard and Bayou Mercer meets right there in the lake in Catahoula, it's dropping itself.
Dropping it out, yeah.
And that's where we get blocked up. And so all the water coming from Catawba, all the water from St. Lambert Parish, all the water from Upper St. Martin Parish, all has to go through the Catahoula Lake area.
We got a picture of Catahoula Lake. You want to go into the next slide? I think we might be going up next.
So we wanted to get it for fresh water, but we would also like to be able to have it to where if we could lower our water stages in preparation for abundance of rain coming down,
Right,
or high rain
right.
like we're getting right now that's coming, if we could have lowered our water levels to be able to accept their water, by the time it gets here, our water would have drained off. It would have worked both ways. We kind of at the mercy of those two weirs. We got 2 500-foot weirs, and when the water comes off, there's no way to shut them off.
No control.
No control. And right now we're pretty fortunate because we are passing half the water is going through the locks in the structure and
More.
going into the Henderson. If we were taking the whole amount of that water
Oh,
coming
you'd be
through,
in really
yeah,
serious
we'd
trouble.
have some serious. I wouldn't be here
Really?
tonight. We'd be flood fighting and sandbagging and trying to keep
Right.
areas from flooding right now.
Okay, this is the project that is that Dixie pipeline we talked about. There's an example of a plugged spall gap. They left gaps in the spall bank when they dug that canal on both sides of it, and over the years, I think that pipeline was put in '62, I believe, huh, Chris?
I think so.
62?
It was in the 60s.
'62, and they just completely plugged up. And Chris here and Jody Mesh had brought it to our attention, and we started working with CPRA. We got that funded, and the project was completed the summer of '23, and it's been a big success. So that lets water that comes from that Grimmett go on down to Lake Henderson. So before, it would block it. It would actually block it. And not only that, it would trap stagnant water behind that spall bank. So whenever they got a flush, it would flush out all that bad water. It would kill everything to the south. You get fish kills and stuff like that. Okay, so you want to go to the next slide. So that's a success. There's a Catahoula Lake. You want to talk about that dredging project, Chris?
So that dredging project, we'll +2, +3 in some areas. That lake used to be, you can talk to the people that were from Catahoula, and they'll tell you that lake used to be 30, 40, 50 foot deep in it at one time in some areas. And we were +2, +3. Deepest part of the lake right now was probably about 4 or 5 foot in some places. When we had, depending on how the tide was working, you could go out there and back at Mr. Kiki's house, and you could see a sandbar. You could basically.
Well, they had an island in the lake.
It looked like a football field out there.
Yeah,
So we were able to, pass a millage for water projects. We're able to do this dredging project, and I can tell you, on the time I've been on the council, that's probably the biggest thing we've done to help out watershed.
Yeah.
Because that water's been passing, and Sherburne will tell you, if you talk to Mayor Coolette, he'll tell you, in Henderson, since we've done this project, you can see the water's moving, we get constant
Yeah.
flow. I really believe if we didn't have this project in place right now.
you'd have flooded today.
we
You'd
would've
have been flooded today.
Yeah,
You'd
would've
be flooded
today.
today.
Yeah.
Because look how, the amount of water coming over that weir was in excess of what happened in 2016.
Yeah, in 2016, right now it's a few feet over the weir, but in 2016 it was several feet over the weir.
Yeah.
We went out there. You remember we tried to get out there to go see the weirs, and we couldn't even get close to them. It
Yeah.
sounded like a hurricane coming through with that water coming over those weirs, and you had the mercy of them weirs.
Yeah.
All these projects work and everything, but the main thing we have to do is we have to come up with a plan. I serve on the Acadiana Water District, and we 13 parishes that make it up, and we've tried to find solutions to help for drainage. And it's gotta be a multi-parish thing. This project is gonna have to be a multi-parish project, and we're gonna have to get some aid from, Washington's gonna have to get involved, and our congressmen and senators up there. But we need a plan to where we're not shooting from the hip anymore.
Right.
We kind of make these calls as on the go, what we're gonna do and all, and every situation is different.
Yeah.
But we need to, listen, Donald Seguro said, you can always put the water in. If we take the water out, we need to bring the water back up, we can crank the pumps up and bring the water back up if we have to. The problem is, we can't get the water out when the other water's
Well,
getting here.
classic case of that right now. I don't know how long it's gonna take for that water to get out.
In Henderson right now, we just kind of use that as a guide, the Henderson Bridge going across where Pat's restaurant is right now. And the water's as high right now as it's been in a long time. And the gauges are showing that we're starting to get it's starting to fall off a little bit.
Right.
But we get a major storm right now. I mean, we're in
Yeah,
a
we're in
bad
trouble.
position.
I looked up at the gauge on Byakatawa, and I think it's only dropped about 6 inches.
6 inches, yeah.
Yeah, it's not much. Next slide, please. All right, this is a project Harold was involved in on Lake Martin Road. Replaced an old metal culvert that was all caved in under the road that allowed water to go actually from the Vermilion River to like a 7,000 acre area that was isolated on the north side of the Lake Martin Road. So that project's been a big success. I talked to the operator of that farm, where that bayou comes through that farm, and he says it's helped them tremendously keeping water off their farm on the Lake Martin Road there in Lake Martin, in St. Martin Parish.
Road, yeah, the road was a dam, and St. Martin Parish made the connection. They cleared out all the trees and all that, and the result was that the Fournets gained about 40 acres of pasture land.
Pasture they couldn't even use, it was
That's right.
too wet, huh? Yeah, completed in the fall of '23. Okay, next, okay, there was a spot dredge on the Vermilion River. They ran into a scheduling issue with the operator there, with the dredging operator, and didn't complete the project. And there was also some unforeseen amount of trash in that dredging material that they really gave them some difficulty. And this slide will illustrate the difficulty of trying to dredge in a urban area. There's not many, like that spall site, there's not a lot of spall sites out there that are available to use like in the city here, in town. There are some, okay, but they're not a lot. So it makes it more difficult and more expensive to do any kind of dredging project. The spot dredge was in the worst spots along the river according to the surveys that were done. Next slide, please. This is another St. Martin Parish project, the Joe Day Canal, and I just got a report as we got to this show that, Chris, you want to talk about this project?
So
Just complete.
this project was done in 2 different phases, and we just completed the second phase. We did a substantial completion. We get ready to do a substantial completion on the project. So that project will be finished and all, and hopefully, that project should see a lot of relief and everything. And, it really helps a lot of the water that comes through, Lake Morton area and stuff and all
Yeah.
that water. That's what the project was designed to work on, and it was, I think it's gonna be successful. I think it's gonna be a major project that we've done in St. Martin Parish that's gonna show a lot of benefit and a
Right.
lot of,
It's actually working really good. We've monitored that Joe Day Canal. Let me explain a little bit why it's really important, okay? It's one of the only connectors that drain south on Bayou Teche, south of the Keystone Dam. So there's a dam on the Bayou Teche that holds the water on the north side of the dam higher. On the south side of the dam, that water can go down to, that's generally almost tidal. It is tidal. In other words, it goes up and down with the tide. It goes down to Lake Foss Point, Lake Dotrieve area. So this canal actually connects the swamp at the airport, the Cypress Island swamp at the airport, to the Bayou Teche where it's tidal, okay? So the big thing is that it allows a second path to allow water out of the Cypress Island swamp, okay? So the Cypress Island or Bayou Tortue swamp, whatever you want to call it there, has another way to get water out, besides having to send it down the Vermilion River, which is compromised, okay? We'll talk about that in a minute. We monitored this canal, the flow in this canal, and we had a little bit of an incident, not to say an incident, a little bit of water 6 or 8 weeks ago that came through here. And we went out to the Joe Dague, and I took some ratings on the flow, and it was flowing really good to the Bayou Teche. Okay, really, really good to the Bayou Teche. There's a reason it was flowing really good to the Bayou Teche. We're going to talk about that in a second. Because at one time, even though this first phase was completed, it still wasn't flowing really good to the Bayou Teche. We'll talk about that. We'll give some credit to Senator Blake Miguez and the project he got done. Next slide, please. So that's the project right there. Blake along got some money with the governor along and the Corps of Engineers, and I think Chester Vermilion contributed also. In the spring of '24, and they cleared and snagged the Bayou Teche from south of the Keystone down to New Iberia. So that got them past the Lowerville Canal, so they could send that water down to Lake Foss Point. So since they've done that, that project in that last slide works a lot better because now it doesn't back up on the Bayou Teche. Before, even though it would send the water to the Bayou Teche, but it couldn't go nowhere because it would all plugged up in the Bayou Teche. It was big old trees that had fallen into the bayou. So this thing was cleaned up, and it's doing a really good job. Next slide, please. Okay, I don't know, you must have went the wrong direction there. Okay, another slide, another St. Martin Parish project. We didn't give you a lot of credit here, Chris.
I appreciate it. We'll take it today.
You take all the credit.
Yeah.
All right, this was identified as a problem because this gate was not reliable. Okay, this lets the water out of Lake Henderson, okay? This is south of the Beulah Rose Bridge on the inside Bar Pit Canal. Okay, what they call that bayou there?
The one with the locks of
Yeah.
the base of Carter Canal.
Carter Canal?
Carter Canal,
Carter
yeah.
Canal. Okay, this lets the water out. A little history on this gate. This gate was put in to build the Interstate 10 bridge across the Atchafalaya floodway. So they could flood, they could float the barges and all the construction equipment and such when they were building the bridge across the basin, okay? It was left in, and now it's maintained as a method to be able to manage the water level, maintain a certain water level in Lake Henderson for both sport fishing and control of vegetation, et cetera, like that. They use it to drop the water. And also doing a storm threat, it's in the plan to open this gate and let as much water out of Lake Henderson as we possibly can. You wanna talk a little bit about this, about the importance of this? It wasn't reliable. We couldn't rely on getting it open before it was broke.
No, the system was old, the locks were old and everything, so we were able to, we had some money that, when, previous administration, when Chester Cedars was parish president, it was some Gomesa or ARPA money, I can't remember which one it was, but we had some money that came through, and we were able to use some of that funding to be able to replace the pontoon bridge, and we had a lot of issues with the pontoon bridge, because being a pontoon bridge, it would keep a lot of the vegetation and stuff,
Yeah.
and it would block up, and it would hold water, and the bridge was in poor condition, so we were able to replace it. So we had about $1 million left over that money, and we were able to use that money to be able to fund this project, to go in there and fix it to where now the hydraulics are working. We built, it was a total, not a total replacement of the project, but it was a major overhaul of the
A
project.
major overhaul, and now it's reliable.
Now it's
you-
reliable, it works, it's functional and everything, and it's in good shape, and like with this storm right here, when we found out this storm was coming, we were able to make the call and get those locks opened up as soon as possible, and, you know, I mean, we were at a position one time, you know, we had to get heavy equipment out there to open it up and close it and stuff, and we had the mercy of the water, so
Right.
now we can basically get it open and closed when we need
Yeah,
to, so.
yeah, so that's a success,
Yeah.
so we have some, I guess the point is, we do have some successes, okay? Whoops, did we jump over one? Go to the next one? All right, well, Lafayette Consolidated Government, this Duhon Road Pond Complex, a regional complex that manages water coming out of Coulilicon, okay, or coming through Coulilicon, is partially complete as of now, okay, and is operational according to the engineer. They've got to do some more work, I believe, on the spillways, some erosion control and such like that, but I think during this last incident there, they went out there and made sure that it was operational in case we get a big rain event. This will come into play if you get a lot of rain on the western side of the parish, up around Scott and north of Scott. So it'll take some of the water that would normally go hit the river. This is north of the river on the west side of 167. So this thing is pretty close to being complete. Okay, so that's good news. That's another success. Next slide, please. Okay, well, one thing we haven't had success with is getting dredging the river. And what we understand is that the start of the project is going to be at the Lake Martin Road. Don't know if that's for sure, because I haven't seen that in writing anywhere, but I was told that. That's up there where the river crosses the Lake Martin Road, not far from that picture where Harold was standing by the culvert that was replaced on the Lake Martin Road, right by the airport, okay? Next slide, please. And it's supposed to end at the Intercoastal Waterway of, down in South Intercoastal City. So I sent an email, and I talked to the operations manager at the Corps of Engineers about where are we with this project, because we've had the money to do this project for 5 years, okay? And as of a visit to the Mississippi River Commission public hearing last fall, they hadn't really started on it, okay? So we put them on the spot. I was there, Harold was there, Lafayette Consolidated Government was there. We all talked about, hey, we need to get this project done. We got the money, we need to get it done. So anyway, in communication with Representative Higgins' office, okay, who was communicating with the Corps of Engineers, they were a little frustrated in trying to get answers about this project. So I called my contact down there, and he got promoted. So he put me with the guy that now is operations manager for the Corps for this area over here. And he sent me an email. I asked him a question about what is the status of the river, okay, the dredging project. Is the project in the work plan, and if so, for what's the target date? And he said, yes, it's in the fiscal year 26 and 27 work plan for the Corps. Has engineering been started complete on the project? He said, yes, engineering design has begun, and we're coordinating with the non-federal sponsors. Okay, the non-federal sponsors are the parishes, okay? So, their role in this dredging project is to provide those fall disposition sites that, that identified in that spot dredging project that we did near Rotary Point. And I think one fall disposition site they identified in St. Martin was the Fournette Farm. Have they talked to y'all about that, Chris?
I don't believe, not that I'm aware
They've
of.
talked to,
But-
they have talked. to
They have
the
talked to
board,
them? They have some, are they abandoned crawfish ponds?
Yeah,
They're abandoned crawfish ponds, and they can make pasture out of them with
Yeah.
fall, with the fall, yeah. So anyway, the next question I asked them, has fall disposition ice been identified? So have these sites been identified for the parishes involved here? He says, yes, multiple disposal locations for mechanical and hydraulic dredging have been identified. Let me talk a little bit about mechanical and hydraulics, everybody knows what we're talking about here. Mechanical is like a big drag line, it's got a bucket, and it's gonna dig in the river and then put a bucket of that silt into a barge and be pushed out. Hydraulic dredging is, they have a hydraulic dredge that basically has a cutter head that stays under the water and it just churns up the bottom and is pumped to down a pipeline to a disposal site. That spot dredging project used a hydraulic dredge, by the way. And Chris's project in
We
Lake
use the
Park
suction, yeah.
uses a suction
Yeah,
hydraulic
suction.
dredge, okay, yeah. So that's a different type of operation. The problem with using a bucket dredge or a mechanical dredge in Lafayette Parish is all the bridges, you know, because trying to open and close all these bridges, massive disruption with traffic. And also you run the risk of one of these bridges, you know, a lot of them are really old, that, some of them are not designed to be open on, you know, just on a special basis. If something goes wrong and like if the Pinhook Bridge would be broke for any period of time, or, you know, or even the Broussard Bridge or any of them, would cause a massive traffic issues in Lafayette Parish. And of course, that impacts everybody that even works in Lafayette Parish and they're coming from another parish. I asked them another question. Is any other important information regarding this project? And he said, updating of modeling to incorporate the LWI, the Louisiana Watershed Initiative data sets, and identification of disposal sites are nearly completed, okay? And then then I asked him the last thing, I said, he had mentioned in our telephone conference that there was going to be a meeting between Lafayette and Vermilion. I don't know why y'all wasn't included, Chris, I have no idea, and the Corps. I said, please share the meeting agenda, location, date, and time. And his response was, this is a follow-up internal meeting with both the non-federal sponsors. I'll let you know if we have another meeting where we can invite outside stakeholders. I think this is a public meeting, and we need to have access to this meeting. And that's my opinion. I mean, the public's is a stakeholder in this meeting. And everybody sitting in this room is a stakeholder in this meeting. So we need to have a seat at the table when they roll out their plan for this particular project. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay, just taking a 50,000-foot view, you know, we have, if you look at the eastern part of Louisiana, the only high ground they got left over there is along the Mississippi and the Bayou Lafourche and along US 90 going down there. Other than that, it's all marsh or swamp. Next slide, please. We're gonna look like that too if we don't take care of our problems over here, okay? Because we're losing land too. So we need to take care of our flooding problems here. It's our last best bet for South Louisiana is Southwest Louisiana. So anyway, with that, you want to put go ahead and close the PowerPoint, put the call-in information back in if anybody wants to talk on the phone. Mr. Harrell will be glad to answer the phone. Thank you. So.
thank you, Dave, that was a real good presentation.
Yeah.
give St. Martin Parish the credit they deserve.
Right.
It's a joint effort between multi-parishes and organizations to get these projects going.
Yeah,
Takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and everything, and it's not one parish that does it by themselves. Everybody has to work, that's, everything needs to be done on a regional aspect.
yeah,
Those days of doing projects in your parish or projects in the next parish and not involving the next one, that's where we get to where we are right now. That's why Vols and, all these other parishes, they're struggling, their flood water's gotta come here. So we need to get all on the same page, work together and come up with a plan, and we wanna make sure that we can accept our flood waters and pass their flood waters. But we have to have a plan to be able to do that, cause we can't just open gates up and let water flow and be able to just think that this water's gonna pass, it's not gonna affect nobody.
We've called for a plan, worked met with our representative on the Mississippi River Commission and reviewed this plan that we drafted. He was okay with it. Now, that's not the whole commission, obviously, okay? Also met with Senator Brock Myers about this plan. And he was working on trying to get something in legislation regarding, but I don't think we're quite there yet, okay? So, but we will get there, and I think this incident that just happened in the Vols Parish,
St. Landry,
and St. Landry Parish too, yeah, and, has really got, we opened up the sandbag facilities, now everybody's worried again, okay, so it's time to do something.
But there's a lot of reservoirs that we know that we can identify up north that they could drain these reservoirs off and hold this water before it gets to where these flood
Yeah.
issues. We just need to put everybody at the table and come up with a plan. We just gotta come up with something.
Right. And look, there is no one magic bullet project. That dredging project on the Vermilion River is definitely not a magic bullet project. It's gonna help, okay? But there are a number of projects in a lot of these parishes. St. Martin Parish has actually done a lot of work on their side as far as the number of projects that need to be done again in St. Martin Parish, need to be worked on in St. Martin Parish. Tell me, Chris, is there something outstanding there that we need to do?
We got the Coulee LaSalle project that we're looking at.
Coulee LaSalle?
Yeah, that project needs to be done. We have a canal that runs, it's called the Bayou Potage Hydro Canal. It runs between Grand Anse, it drains off all the Saci area, but that canal kind of follows the Bayou Army Canal, the Warby Canal. It's about a mile away from it, but it takes water from, a lot of water from St. Landry Parish and all. We're looking at that project right now. It's called the Ollie's Bonan project, and it would help to drain those areas in the back of Grand Anse and all of Saci where the high school's at. But if we could get that canal though, it would do more than just that. That's what it would do for us. But what it would do for St. Landry Parish and the Orneville area and up higher up, it would relieve. It's kind of like the Joe Day was. It's real blocked up. It's got a lot of trees that fell in it.
Right.
It hadn't been dug. I'm 60 years old. We used to live near the canal when I was younger. And I was probably about 5 years old, my mom said, when they dug that thing. And it hadn't
That's
been
the
done
last
since.
time it's been dug.
Last
Well,
time it's
I
been
can
dug.
tell a similar story. I'm 78 years old,
Yeah.
and I worked on the Upper Bayou Tesh in St. Landry Parish snagging and dredging project that my dad was the contractor on, okay? And I was in my 20s, early 20s, okay? So we're talking about just 50 years, and I hear that story over and over again. The last time we did anything, the last time the Vermilion River's been dredged was in the early 50s, that Harold witnessed, okay? I understand the Amy River, they had a major flood over there in Baton Rouge Parish, in Livingston Parish. The last time that thing was cleared and snagged was in the 50s, or 50 years ago, or something like that. So we just can't go, the Bayou Test, another classic example, like what Senator Miguez had got done on the Bayou. That hasn't been done. It's after he did that piece between the Keystone Dam and New Iberia, I had somebody tell me, what about the rest of the Bayou? It's true.
I know Ted Vermilion was working on a project with the Corps of Engineers, and I think they proposed a project, And I think they're just waiting for some funding or for a starting date of when they're gonna do it. But the project would actually go from the Keystones all the way up to the Orneville area to,
Yeah, yeah,
that, what is it, set of locks over there, whatever the
Yeah,
gates are,
yeah.
right up to that area there. So, cause I can tell you, that Bayou Teche, when you get behind Poche's Meat Market in Poche Bridge area right there, going into Cecilia, the bayou's pretty plugged up right there, you know, it's the
Yeah.
same thing like we had below the Keystone locks. It is just years of, neglect, I suppose, you know, hurricanes drop it and it stays there and it just built up and created dams all over in that.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
You have bridges along there that trap logs and stuff,
yeah,
And you know,
really
Mr.
puts a restriction on.
Yeah, and some of these bridges are not operable bridges, they don't open and close.
No,
So that's where, you know, from the Keystone homes down, they were able to open those bridges. That's what we're gonna see from when we get to the Parks, the first bridge in Parks, and then when we get to where the Root Bridge was, and the three bridges in Bow Bridge, we only have one bridge right there that actually opens. So it's gonna be, it'll be a task to get it done. They're looking at ways and trying to figure out how they can get it done, but as far as I know, the project was approved, that it was gonna be done. It's just a matter of a start time and lining up the right people to get it done.
yeah. Yeah. Well, Harold, you got anything to add to that conversation?
well, I just wanna, you mentioned that there was 7,000 acres that became, a project, you know, that the opening of that canal, that, restoring the flow on the Lake Martin Road to that north side. There we go, we got somebody we need to talk.
Somebody wants to talk about it?
You on there, can we help you?
Yes, something y'all were discussing a few minutes ago about the coastal lower elevation areas along the coast below our watershed. Is it? I'm not sure I followed that, but is it possible if all these projects were enacted, would they result in building land below the watershed? Thank you.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think we have enough velocity in all the,
No,
the channels to carry the silt all the way down to the lower part, down by the coast.
right, yeah.
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 Yeah, we don't have enough velocity especially in the condition that these tributaries are in right now. They're so compromised that the flow is so slow that during just a normal drainage, when you don't have a flood, the silt is dropping out before it even gets close to the coast.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
That's what we experienced in Catahoula and St. Martin Parish.
that's why Catahoula Lake's all
That's why
plugged
it all
up.
plugged
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
for
Thank
the
you.
call. This is Roger.
Yeah,
But 7,000 acres, when you look at the projects that were done in Lafayette, the total is about 90 acres.
that's a really inexpensive retention area, huh?
Yeah, we did,
Actually got a slide in that PowerPoint, it's further down the deck there. Are you still at the end of the PowerPoint there?
Yeah, I believe so.
You can call it back up again, we might be able to show people what that look going down.
Okay.
Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. There it is, right there. Okay, that's what Harold's talking about, that 7,000 acres. That culvert allows that water to go into the Lake Martin Road, into that area over there. We measured that area, just see how big it was. And, it's a very low elevation. And what had happened is that because of the road and the old spall banks on the Vermilion River from the original dredging project had isolated that area of the swamp pretty well, where the water could get there, but it gets there a lot better now. So if you see the blue arrow is actually coming from the Vermilion River. That bayou, that little canal there, a little bayou, actually goes all the way back to the Vermilion River. And the water, when there's a real high water in the Vermilion River, the water's flowing that direction. And the
yeah,
Vermilion River's flowing south right there. The Vermilion River itself is flowing south, but that little canal is flowing flowing into that 7,000 acre area. Next slide, I think we got a picture of that project in there. Not going? Whoop, you must have went to, oh,
Keep going.
That's back at the beginning.
yeah, I'd like to talk about this one too a little bit though. I don't know how it got slipped out, it must have jumped over it or something. We got a few minutes here. And just to let everybody know how the water flows in this watershed here. Up in Alexandria, they used to drain to the Red River, now that Red River navigation kind of killed that. The east side goes into Vols Parish. It hits that Bayou de Glace complex. That's all that water from Alexandria ends up in Bayou de Glace where they had the big flood, okay? On the west side of Alexandria, it goes down Bayou Buff and Bayou Cocodrie, but net, it all ends up in Bayou Catawba. And if it can't get out of Bayou Catawba, it's just gonna back up. And it's gonna, in this case, it's gonna back up all the way to Vols Parish. And, I got a report today from one of my board members that was driving up I-49. He said everything was flooded. And he was up there close to Bunkie and it was still flooded, okay? So it just backs up. So they get, if it can't get out of Bayou Catawba, how can it get out of Bayou Catawba? Through those gates into Lake Henderson, or down Bayou Amy, or down Bayou Teche and the Vermilion River. And every one of those channels is compromised some kind of way.
You know, we had talked about in the 3 phases of the project we did when we did the Dixon was the first phase. Second phase was the dredging of the Grimmett Canal, opening of the Grimmett. But there was another phase in there where we had talked about attaching Catawba back up to the river.
Yeah, I think that talking to the engineers that work for the state about that project, which they think would be a great project, they said it's a $2 billion project. And it's just an economic hurdle so the best bang for our buck is to get the Grimmett as clean as possible and put that gate between Catawba and Bayou Amy
Right.
and hope for the best, because we're not gonna get $2 billion to reconnect the thing. And the Corps of Engineers did that. The federal government ought to pay for that, okay?
Well,
They ought to pay for that. They ought to pay for a lot of this stuff.
If there was a gate there now, just think how much more water we could be getting directly into the river and having to go through Henderson and everything else. I mean, you'd be moving water like quick, it's a shorter distance
Oh,
to get
yeah,
right there to the
yeah.
river.
Well, look,
It seems like when they designed that project, it would have had a set of gates there.
if we could reconnect the Bayou Catawba to the Bayou de Glace, the Bayou de Glace to the Bar Pit Levee north of 190, I think it would take care of a lot of problems. Because Bayou de Glace, I don't know if you've spent any time up
But
there.
the locks, that's the ones where the locks are broken, right?
Yeah, but we're talking about bringing it in where you're not even dealing with those locks, okay? We're bringing it in downstream of those locks. We're bringing it in right there on the other side, right north of Highway 1. A farmer proposed, this is not something we proposed, there was a farmer up there, I think it was Mr. Morrow, from Simsport, that said, hey, we just need to connect the north end of the borrow pit to Bayou de Glace. Now you have to put a gate right there because you don't want Bayou de Glace backing up into the whole watershed when there's a Mississippi River flood, okay? So, but in this case, we had a 20-foot difference. I looked at the gauges between Bayou de Glace and the Atchafalaya River in Simsport. 20 foot, 8 miles away, 20 foot. So,
And there's an old railroad bed that's only about 4.5 miles. It goes from the old bridge to the Atchafalaya River. The old Bayou de Glace made a big S, and it's about 30 miles.
we got about,
You got 2 minutes.
we got how long?
2 minutes.
You on there? Can you?
Yeah, it's me again. I have another question. I might have missed this if y'all talked about it, but why didn't our area flood?
Why didn't we didn't get the rain, okay, so basically the only water we got down here for the most part was the water from up north. Okay, if you notice the river levels were really high stayed high, because the water from the north was backfilling everything that was draining out of the Vermilion River. Okay, so that's why we didn't flood. If we'd have got, I think we had about 2 inches at my house or something like that over several days. Okay, They had 34 inches up in,
12 hours.
what? The Balls Parish.
Rocheville had
Yeah,
like 31 inches in 12 hours.
But
Yeah.
we
Set a
saw
record.
the rains we caught Father's Day on Sunday. Our canals filled up really, really quick, and the reason it filled up so quick is because we were starting to pass the floodwaters through Catawba that was coming down already.
Yeah.
So that's why our tributaries are kind of full, our main tributaries
Uh-oh.
that drain over.
40 seconds.
So,
All right, I think
Thank
we,
you all for being here.
Thanks.
yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate you having us on, Harold, and hopefully we give a little understanding of what happened here, you know, and, y'all call the Corps of Engineers and tell them y'all need to lower that water in by Catawba before one of these storms hit. It's gonna help everybody.
20 seconds.
So anyway, you wanted to say something about Spanish Lake? Say it
Yeah, we working on, I'm on the Spanish Lake Commission, and we're gonna make some changes, proposals to Spanish Lake. Anybody out there that has any interest in the Spanish Lake, if you wanna attend one of our meetings,
5 seconds.
we'd appreciate it. We'd like to get some input on Spanish Lake area.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Thank
You're
you, Ms.
welcome.
Howard.
Yeah.
You're welcome.